The high-concept puzzle game is a genre that seems to have one basic rule for success. The closer you are to Tetris, the better. Alexei Pajitnov's Soviet software masterpiece is, by several measurements, the most successful and iconic video game ever made, thanks to its addictive depth and simple elevator pitch. Differently shaped blocks are falling from the top, and you have to find ways to fill entire lines near the bottom, or they'll pile up and you'll lose. Games like the Bust-A-Move series, the Puyo Puyo series, the Puzzle Fighter series found success riffing on the basic Tetris concept. Hell, even Mario got in on the action. But stray too far, and people start getting rowdy, as exhibited by the passionate split decision on Wetrix. Wetrix was designed by British developer brothers John and Stee Pickford. Yes, he goes by Stee. The pair were working at the company Software Creations, making moribund licensed games, before branching out to form their own company, Z2. They were working on a gothic hack-and-slash game called Vampire Circus, but got obsessed while working on the physics of the water animation on one of the levels, and decided to build an entire second game around it. They pitched this new game to UK publisher Ocean Software, who was skeptical, but found many of its employees obsessively playing the demo, and eventually decided to sign them to a 2-game deal. 1 week after signing this deal, Ocean Software got bought out by the larger publisher Infogrames, who made a deal with the Pickford brothers. They would have to sacrifice Vampire Circus, which was forcibly turned into, of all things, a low-rent, licensed puzzle platformer starring the Tasmanian Devil from Looney Tunes. But as a result, they would be given basically free-rein autonomy when it came to the puzzle game, which they were calling Wetrix as a joke, but to avoid copyright, modified it slightly to Wetrix. The goal of Wetrix is to build up as many little concave pools as possible on a long, flat plane, using walls, referred to in the manual as uppers, falling like Tetris blocks that will raise the level of the ground, visually akin to the building tools in SimCity. At non-specific intervals, large amounts of water will come down, and you have to make sure you're building full, complete crater receptacles to hold the water inside them. Water, as it tends to do, will seep through any cracks or crevices in the foundation and drip off the sides of the plane, as denoted by arrows. When enough water drips off the sides, measured by a Double Dare-esque digital beaker sitting on the side of the screen, the project collapses, and the game ends. They were planning on keeping Wetrix PC only, but a friend of theirs from their software creation days offered to code it in secret on the Nintendo 64, which they presented to and got a thumbs up from Ocean, and eventually Nintendo. The game dropped for the 64 in the summer of 1998, and sold well, but Infogrames seemed disinterested in promoting it, so it topped out due to lack of availability. The critical response was mostly positive, but sharply divided. The fans truly loved it for its deep, complicated gameplay, but the detractors had a whole lot to complain about. Its steep learning curve, its high difficulty, its unclear goals, its basic graphics, its limited camera mobility and misleading shadows, its lack of communication when it comes to what it's asking you to do. One specific player who had a lot of issues trying to wrap his head around Wetrix on original release was, well, me. I rented this game from Hollywood Video back in 1999, which meant it didn't come with a manual. And also, it was 1999, so we didn't yet have the internet at our house. That meant that I was at the mercy of the game's internal communication to figure out what the hell was going on. And Wetrix absolutely does not disseminate the proper information in a way that makes the game completely understandable. Without those directional signifiers, I found myself absolutely lost, and brought to mind one of my greatest game failures of my 90s childhood. I wanted to buy the Super Nintendo racing game Uniracers, and accidentally instead bought the befuddlingly minimalist puzzle game Zoop. I felt a lot of Zoop in Wetrix as a kid, and bailed as soon as possible. I had assumed that I would have a lot more success as a wizened man in my mid-30s with picking it up and solving it. But playing the slightly upscaled and modified Dreamcast port known as Wetrix Plus, it turns out, nope! I try to play these games for an hour or two blind without looking anything up, and I spent my first gameplay hour of Wetrix as confused and annoyed as I had been in 5th grade. For instance, it's not immediately clear if it's better to make one big solid pool or a series of small pools. It's also not immediately clear if the Double Dare measuring meter is charting something positive or negative. It's also not clear what any of the randomly occurring non-water items, including flaming meteors and bombs, exactly are. If I'm being honest, I've logged several hours and still don't regularly remember which ones are good and helpful and which ones are damaging. I played it long enough that I started to at least get the hang of what it was asking me to do, at least after I did enough research online that told me what things actually mean in the f***ing game. But I still didn't get very good at Wetrix. I made some pools, I filled some water, I shook some boards. But I rarely got much over 500 points, and the game trying to make me feel good about my new high score dissipated quickly when it showed the beginner's scoreboard that topped out at 20,000. I can't say I think this game is particularly interesting, and I certainly did not find myself addicted to its task. But also, I'm clearly not smart enough to wrap my head around the things it wants. And clearly, Wetrix has an audience that clicks with it. And then, there's everyone else. And while this seems to be more a me problem than an it problem, just as I did when I was younger, Wetrix leaves me high and dry. Next time, this kid's name is Mag Launcher, and his partner is Linear Cannon. What's the butler's name? Grenade? Oh, it is. Huh.